to imagine the sadness and the loss that you've suffered at this system that's currently in place, and we hope that we'll be able to demonstrate to you that we can change that. And Paige, thank you very much for being here with us this morning. It's a pleasure to have you here. Mr. Coots, if I listen to Ms. Hanselman's testimony and I look at the GAO report, it would just seem on its face, and if you just take the Texas and California incidents, we don't know anything about them. We only know the number apparently, but there would appear that when you have a protocol in place that Illinois is trying to put in place and has in place in a number of schools, that it would be safe to assume that there are in fact thousands of cases of restraint and seclusion that turn out to be unnecessary and that can be prevented. Is that a fair assumption?
We identified hundreds, and it would seem likely that there are thousands. I mean, the numbers keep rising as we speak from what comes in, but certainly we know there's hundreds. And given that just those two states had 33,000 instances, not necessarily improper,
right,
it's likely it's a bigger number.
Ms. Hanselman, I don't know what you had in place before this in terms of reporting or not, but you've talked about the number of incidents that you believe have been avoided by the use of the positive system.
Yes, we have seen with all of our schools that have implemented PBIS a significant reduction in the number of referrals and utilizations of restraints or seclusion as a result of positive behavior interventions.
Thank you. Mr. Coots, in the report you highlight the deaths that have taken place. Mrs. Price is here. From a face-down restraints to block that block the airway, and that this is a reoccurring problem with the use of this restraint. In some cases, it's argued that there's training that takes place, but again, from your report, it's hard to determine whether or not that training is adequate in terms of the protection for the safety of the children.
Yes, that's correct. I mean, the face-down restraint or the prone restraint was responsible for at least 3 of the 4 deaths here, and possibly the 4th. There are some accounts that the 4th child was face down when they were sat on the school van. And you may recall from our work on residential programs for troubled youth, there were many deaths there that were the result of prone or face-down restraint. So it's certainly where you block the breathing, even if you're sitting up probably, but anything that blocks or restricts the breathing is at high risk, and that's, I think, pretty well.
Well, I would think that would, I mean, the cumulative evidence that we have here would suggest that perhaps that's not a restraint that you want to continue to use on young children. I mean, given what we learned in the residential facilities, what we're now seeing in schools, this is a high-risk restraint, especially in the hands of people who have any awareness or training. I don't want to give training as that's a green light for this, but even with the training, this is a very high-risk restraint.
It would seem to be the highest risk restraint from what we can see.
You know, it's just hard. It's very hard to figure out how you use this and what is happening to this child, most of whom are 15 and younger, but a number of them are very young, under 11 years old. You know, we've been discussing a lot and listening to about waterboarding, where you drip water over a cloth on a person's face, they're upside down, I guess, and you create the perception that they're drowning. And you start to think of here, you're losing your breath, you're losing your ability to breathe. Ms. Price talked about Cedric trying to tell people that he couldn't breathe. So you're creating that same psychological impact on that child that they're going to suffocate. And in fact, in some cases, they were suffocated. They died. And even if you, quote, use it successfully, the fear, the humiliation that that child has experienced, to me, is almost incomprehensible. That we would think that this is some kind of proper therapy to use on very young children. You don't need to respond. I just taken by your report that this would be so readily turned to, and again documented in the GAO report, that in many instances this wasn't about a child being a danger to themselves or to others. This was about trying to restore order, or the teacher didn't like the behavior, or whatever the interaction was. The child's life ended up being threatened, but the child wasn't threatening anybody else's life or themselves prior to that. And I just think when you think about the age appropriateness of the seclusions, 75 times locked away in a dark room, people locked away in dark rooms for hours, wetting themselves, defecating, any understanding of how sensitive young children are about their peers and themselves and back and forth, I mean, this punishment is way, way out of bounds. This behavior by people imposing this is way out of bounds of what I believe are the social norms in this society. And I don't understand that we have this sort of patchwork state regulation where states have taken a look at this. And interesting, it appears that the states that have taken a look at this realize not only the jeopardy that they are in, but the jeopardy that they're putting children in, and they've tried to, in one way or another, have some system to check this. But I think if they would just pause for a moment and think about what they're doing. If you look at the GAO report, a male from the age of 11 through 13 was being abused. A male 15, female 4 years old, 4 males under the age of 6, a male 8 years old, 5 students ages 6 and 7, a female 7 years old, a male 9 years old. These are very young children.
Yeah, 4 of our 18 were actually 4 years old. So they were preschoolers.
Yeah. No, this is, this is just unacceptable. It's just unacceptable that this would be a policy within a public institution with respect to the care of these children. Everyone on this committee fully appreciates the difficulty the teachers engage in a daily basis of trying to teach and create an atmosphere for learning in a classroom with the various mix of children that we have. And we have processes and we have protections in place, clearly insufficient protections within a schoolroom, but none of that justifies this kind of behavior. And I have to tell you, I got to believe that in many instances, these teachers are victimized almost as much because the fact that they don't have the kinds of resources necessary to deal with this. Either they need additional training just in how they react and respond to students, but when you get into an incident where it requires something beyond that, it seems to me they're kind of left to themselves here, and that's probably not a good situation. But we'll get into that more so. Dr. Peterson, just back to your testimony, and I think I'm running out of time here. I am out of time. Just if I might quickly infringe on my colleagues' time here, you started to talk about what is the evidentiary base that any of this makes sense?
Well, there is no, is that on? There is no evidentiary base that these are effective in changing behavior. There's a belief that...
I think your mic is not on. My hearing is superior. My wife tells me that all the time.
There's no basis that they change behavior, but I think many people believe that they may be necessary in these emergency situations to prevent injury. And it's a simple matter of teachers' obligation to defend the other kids in the class and even the target student from their own behavior as well as themselves.
My concern would be, I don't think the GAO report suggests that this is only done in emergency situations. That
Absolutely
there's a huge
right.
gap between.
Yeah, and I think we need to find the way to correct these abusive situations, but to also provide the support you mentioned to teachers who are really struggling to do the right thing for kids.
Mr.